children, classic Hollywood was the greatest illusion machine the world has ever produced. Perfect lighting, perfect costumes, perfect smiles on the way into a premiere, and perfect smiles on the way out. The studio system was built, top to bottom, on the idea that what the camera sees is all there is. But some of those icons walked onto set carrying something no lighting rig could touch.
A little reform wouldn't do you any harm. As a matter of fact, I think it would do the state good if somebody would reform you.
A comedian who lost his one-year-old son in the morning and went on national radio that same evening because the broadcast was scheduled and he refused to cancel. A songwriter whose most beloved holiday compositions were written by a man who spent every Christmas visiting his baby's grave. A mother who poured years of her life and every dollar she had into finding a son who simply never came back.
If I could only get inside that brain of yours and understand.
If you are new here, subscribe now and hit the bell so you never miss one of these. Now let's go. Number 1. Veronica Lake. William Anthony Detley, age 7 days, 1943.
A little reform wouldn't do you any harm. As a matter of fact, I think it would do the state good if somebody would reform you.
In 1943, Veronica Lake was the defining face of American cinema. The peekaboo hairstyle that women across the country were copying. Magazine covers, major studio productions, a career at its absolute peak. And in that same year, she tripped over a lighting cable on set. According to contemporary press reports and subsequent biographies, that accident triggered premature labor. Her baby boy, William Anthony Detley, was born too early and placed immediately into an incubator. Newspapers reported his death on July 15, 1943. He was 7 days old. The press covered it in short, clinical lines, a few sentences. Then back to the film reviews. Some accounts noted only that she took it very hard. There was one more detail that places the full weight of the moment in context. The child's father was serving in the military. War and family tragedy arrived simultaneously, as they did in so many homes in that era, splitting a household across two different kinds of loss at once. What followed moved quickly. By August 1943, the marriage was fracturing. By December, the divorce was final. The loss did not cause everything that came after, but it accelerated a fault line that was already forming. Her career continued publicly. Privately, she was living in a different reality. Because glamour does not erase an empty crib, and there are dates that burn themselves into memory permanently regardless of what is happening on screen. Number 2. Charles Boyer. Michael Boyer, age 21, 1965.
If I could only get inside that brain of yours and understand.
In the early hours of September 23, 1965, Charles Boyer's only son, Michael, died at home from a gunshot wound. He was 21 years old. Press reports at the time described the wound as self-inflicted. What followed was what always follows a death that the public decides requires an explanation. Noise, speculation, competing narratives. People constructing versions of events that reduce an unbearable fact into something that sounds more manageable. For Boyer, none of that noise changed the single central reality. His only child was gone. Boyer had, by most external measures, a controlled and respectable public life. A long marriage, a steady career, a reputation built on restraint and professionalism. But there is a specific dimension to losing an only child that goes beyond grief in the conventional sense. It is not just the loss of a person, it is the loss of continuation. The sense that the line simply ends. That the entire future branch of a family, the grandchildren, the anniversaries, the accumulating years, has been removed in one day. From that point forward in Boyer's timeline, life is not about returning to normal. It is about endurance. About keeping the face composed while the interior is something else entirely. Number 3. Stan. Stanley Laurel Jr., age 9 days, 1930.
What do you want?
Don't push it up until I tell you.
In 1930, Stan Laurel and his wife welcomed a baby boy named Stanley. He arrived approximately 2 months premature and lived for 9 days. In the records, the entry carries almost no detail. Because in that era, there often were no details to give. Medicine could reach a hard limit, and families were left with the date and nothing else. No treatment that failed, no procedure that might have helped, just a limit. And then silence. Grief at that speed and scale does not move through a household at a uniform pace. Two people inside the same loss are rarely in the same place at the same time. The tension that builds in that silence, through blame that is never spoken, exhaustion that has no outlet, the kind of strain you cannot explain to anyone who wasn't in that room, is the kind that fractures a marriage slowly and quietly. Laurel's divorce came later in the decade. A direct line from one event to the other cannot always be drawn cleanly, but the death of a child is the kind of mark that does not leave a family timeline. What the public saw during all of it was the performance. The timing, the physical comedy, the precision of a gag that had to land on cue. What was happening behind it was a man carrying a fact that has no punchline and no resolution. The studio era demanded the smile on schedule. The home carried the loss for the rest of the year and for the rest of the life. If you are watching this and you are not yet subscribed, this is the moment. This channel exists to tell the history of Hollywood's golden era without the studio gloss. Real lives, real records, real history. Hit subscribe and the notification bell. We are going to keep going. Number 4. Lily Damitta. Sean Flynn, age 28, disappeared 1970, declared dead 1984. Errol Flynn's son Sean did not follow his father into acting for long. He walked away from Hollywood and became a war photojournalist. On April 6, 1970, he disappeared in Cambodia alongside fellow journalist Dana Stone. They were not traveling with a convoy. They were not under any formal protection. Sources described them riding motorcycles independently along Highway 1. By most accounts, they reached an improvised checkpoint, a white sedan positioned across the road, armed men positioned behind it. Other reporters nearby spoke with them. After that, Sean Flynn and Dana Stone were gone. What followed was the specific and particular nightmare that no form of grief fully prepares a parent for. No body, no confirmation, no grave. Only theories: abduction, a prison camp, captivity somewhere, taken somewhere, just the word that doesn't change: missing. His mother, Lily Damitta, poured significant financial resources and years of her life into the search. Private investigators, intermediaries, any lead that produced even a thread of possibility. Nothing came back with a definitive answer. In 1984, she secured a legal declaration. Sean Flynn was officially declared dead in absentia. That declaration was paperwork. It was not closure. It was the legal system standing in for a truth that never fully arrived. What she was left with was the hardest sustained version of loss, years of waiting for a son who existed, in the end, only inside one word. Number 5. Lou Costello. Louis Francis Costello Jr., Butch, age 1, 1943. On November 4, 1943, Lou Costello's one-year-old son, Louis Francis Costello Jr., called Butch by his family, died after falling into the backyard pool at their home in Van Nuys. Contemporary reports were plain about it. A tragic accident. No crime, no mystery. A moment of ordinary life that turned fatal. What happened next is the part of this story that people still struggle to fully process. Costello had a scheduled radio broadcast that same day with his partner Bud Abbott. The options available to him were obvious. Cancel, postpone, have someone fill in. He refused every one of them. Just hours after losing his son, he went on the air and completed the broadcast. Later accounts describe Abbott addressing the tragedy only after the program had ended, as if the comedy had to finish before reality was allowed to catch up. The aftermath of a loss like that inside a home is brutal in the most ordinary and relentless way. Every corner of the house becomes a reminder of what is missing. Work transforms into a frame you hold onto simply to avoid collapsing in public. Costello remained a working comedian with contracts and applause and a relentless schedule. But the life behind the laughter was no longer the same life that had existed the day before. It couldn't be. Number 6. John Garfield. Catherine Kathy Garfield, age 6, 1945. John Garfield was the kind of screen actor who carried exposed nerve endings onto camera. Never polished, never soft, always a man at the edge of something. In 1945, his private life absorbed a loss that was sudden and total. His daughter Catherine, called Kathy, died on March 18, 1945. The cause recorded is a severe allergic reaction. It happened in the space of a normal day. One moment, she was simply a child coming home. Her body went into crisis. There was no prolonged illness, no treatment to try next, no time to prepare. The house went from ordinary to emergency in minutes, and then to silence. What a loss like that does to a parent is not simply grief. It is the relentless, involuntary replaying of the last normal moment. The search for the point where it could have gone differently, the awareness that there was no point, and the inability to stop searching for one anyway. Short biographical accounts of Garfield consistently reach the same conclusion: he never truly recovered. He kept moving, kept showing up for work, kept performing. But something fundamental collapsed and did not return. With everything else pressing on him in that era, political scrutiny, industry conflict, mounting professional pressure, his daughter's death became the fracture point that permanently removed the sense that life could ever be safe again. Number 7. Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. Robin Rogers, age 1, 1952, / Debbie Rogers, age 12, 1964. To the public, their family was the image of wholesome American optimism, faith, warmth, family-friendly programming, bright smiles. In reality, they buried 2 daughters. Their biological daughter Robin was born with Down syndrome and serious congenital heart problems. She was not yet 2 years old when she contracted mumps. Her condition deteriorated rapidly on top of the existing health complications, and she died. Not long before what would have been her 2nd birthday. After Robin's death, Dale Evans wrote a book called Angel Unaware. It was not a publicity exercise, it was a survival mechanism. In an era when families were frequently pressured to keep children with disabilities out of public view entirely and to speak of them as little as possible, Evans chose to write publicly that this child was loved and that her life had meaning. That required a specific kind of courage in that specific moment in American culture. Then came 1964 and a completely different kind of loss. Their adopted daughter Debbie was killed in a church bus accident near San Clemente, California. Reports described a bus carrying dozens of children returning from a charitable trip. The vehicle lost control and collided with multiple vehicles. Debbie was 12 years old. Roy Rogers was in the hospital recovering from neck surgery when the news came. Dale Evans later recalled her first reaction in a single sentence: "I hear it, but I can't accept it." After Debbie's death, the family moved. Because sometimes the house, the road, and the familiar geography become permanent triggers. Staying in the same place stops being possible. Number 8. Red Skelton. Richard Skelton, age 9, 1958, on screen. Red Skelton projected a warmth and safety that made the world feel manageable. Off-camera, his family lived by hospital schedules. His son Richard was diagnosed with leukemia at age 9. Doctors gave a grim prognosis and told Skelton to step away from work entirely, to take whatever time was needed. He made the opposite decision. He went back to the show. Not because the work mattered more, but because he believed it was the only way to keep himself functional, and the only way to remain steady for his son. After the diagnosis, the family took an extended trip through Europe. Not a vacation. An attempt to let Richard see as much of the world as possible while there was still time. Contemporary accounts from that period document a meeting with Pope Pius VI in the summer of 1957 as one of the defining moments of that journey. The trip ended earlier than planned. London's press became intrusive and aggressive, and the family came home. Richard died on May 10, 1958, 10 days before his 10th birthday. After that, things Skelton had spoken about on air naturally: family, home life, his son, became subjects he could no longer approach easily. People close to him later recalled a chain of physical blows that followed in the years after: an injury, a serious health episode, and hospitalization. As if his body eventually registered what his schedule had been refusing to acknowledge. From the outside, it still looked like broadcasts and a functioning career. Inside, everything had narrowed to one fixed point on one specific day. Number 9. Irving Berlin. Irving Berlin, Jr. Age 24 days, 1928. In December 1928, Irving Berlin and his wife welcomed a baby boy. On Christmas Day, 24 days after that baby arrived, he died. After that, Christmas was never simply a holiday inside their home. Year after year, Berlin and his wife marked the date not with celebration, but by going to their son's grave. It was not a public gesture or a symbolic statement. It became a fixed private ritual. The one thing that held still when everything else in a successful career continued moving forward. The contrast is almost unbearable to sit with when you know it. The man who wrote compositions that filled living rooms across America with warmth and festivity spent that same calendar date observing a private loss at a graveside. The reason was not scandal or tragedy in the dramatic sense. It was simply the era. In the late 1920s, even wealthy families with access to the best available medical care could lose a newborn without warning and without a clear explanation. Money could provide comfort and doctors. It could not provide certainty. And then the calendar does what it always does. It returns to the same date and asks you to survive it one more time.
Number 10. Charlie Chaplin. Charles Chaplin Jr., age 42, 1968. This one is different from every other entry on this list, and the difference is precisely what makes it one of the hardest. Charles Chaplin Jr. was not a child when he died. He was 42 years old. He had lived his own life, attempted his own acting career, and in 1960 published a memoir titled My Father, Charlie Chaplin, an attempt to account for himself, his father, and what it meant to grow up inside a name that belonged to the whole world before it ever belonged to you.
On March 20th, 1968, in Santa Monica, he died suddenly from a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot blocking an artery in the lungs. No prolonged illness, no warning. One day he was present, the next he was not. When a parent loses an adult child, the nature of the grief has a specific quality that is distinct from every other kind. It is not only the loss of the person, it is the severing of an entire forward line, the accumulating years that were supposed to extend beyond you, the continuation that adult children represent. You cannot tell yourself he was fragile, or that the odds were always against him. He was grown. He was building his life. And then, in a single day, that line was cut. What follows is a sequence of practical realities, each one precise and sharp. Papers to sign. A funeral to arrange. Personal belongings that need to be sorted through and accounted for. A phone that will never ring with that voice again. And the blunt, irreducible understanding that no amount of status or legacy softens any part of it. 10 names. 10 losses that no camera ever fully showed. A comedian on the radio hours after his son drowned in a backyard pool. A songwriter at a graveside every Christmas for the rest of his life. A mother still waiting for confirmation that never came 14 years after her son disappeared on a road in Cambodia. The golden era of Hollywood produced extraordinary work, and it was produced by human beings carrying the full weight of human lives, grief included, and sometimes grief most of all. If this is the kind of history you want more of, the real and documented stories behind the most iconic names of the golden screen era, subscribe to this channel right now. We go where the studio retrospectives never do. New content drops regularly, and every piece is built on documented history, not speculation. We'll see you in the next one.